My boyfriend said, "I'm not introducing you to my new coworkers. They think I'm single, and it's good for networking." I said, "Professional boundaries matter." Then I showed up at his office holiday party as the plus one of his married coworker. When I introduced myself as his girlfriend to his entire department, the room went quieter than any apology ever could. My name is Mara Whitmore. I was 29 years old when I learned that being loved in private can still feel like being humiliated in public. I'm a diesel mechanic for a regional logistics company. I work on fleet trucks, delivery vans, and engines that sound angry before sunrise. My hands are almost always stained with grease, even after scrubbing. I own exactly 2 nice blouses, 1 pair of heels I hate, and I have never once used the phrase brand alignment without wanting to laugh. That matters because Adrian used to say he loved that about me. He used to sit on the edge of my workbench when he picked me up late, watching me wipe oil from my wrists and say, "You know what I love about you? You're real. You don't perform for people." I believed him. 5 months before everything fell apart, Adrian got what he called his big break. He had worked in marketing for years, but this job was different. Better title, better salary, better office, better people to impress. A mid-size agency with exposed brick walls, cold brew on tap, and employees who said things like "culture forward" without irony. He was excited, and I was excited for him. I took him out to dinner the night he got the offer. I bought him the leather portfolio he had been staring at online for weeks. I listened while he talked about client decks, strategy meetings, and how this job could finally put him in the right rooms. For the first couple of months, everything seemed normal. He came home with stories about his team: a designer who always wore red lipstick, a project manager who ran meetings like court hearings, a senior account lead who apparently knew everyone worth knowing in the city. I listened, asked questions, remembered names, and did what supportive partners do when someone they love is trying to climb. Then, somewhere around month 3, I noticed I was never in the stories. Not once. When he talked about weekends at work, it was always, "I tried that new restaurant," or "I saw that movie." Never "we." If someone at the office asked what he did after work, apparently I did not exist in the answer. At first, I told myself it was professionalism. Some people keep work and relationships separate. I respected that. But then he started dodging anything that might put me near his coworkers. His team went to a rooftop bar one Friday. I offered to meet him afterward. "It's just a team thing," he said. A month later, his department had a casual cookout at his boss's house. Partners were invited. He told me it felt too early to introduce me. Too early, after 2.5 years together. By month 5, I realized not a single person at his company knew he had a girlfriend. The night I finally asked him, we were on the couch. His laptop was open, Slack glowing across his face while he smiled at something someone had written. I remember that blue light clearly, because sometimes the smallest details stay with you longer than the argument itself. "Your holiday party is coming up, right?" I asked. "Am I going with you?" His fingers stopped moving. Then he closed the laptop slowly. That was the first warning. "So," he said, rubbing his thumb along the edge of the computer, "I need to talk to you about that." My stomach tightened before he even finished. He told me his new coworkers thought he was single, not because anyone had forced him into an answer, he said. It had started accidentally. Then it became strategic. Strategic. He said being perceived as single made him more approachable, more flexible, easier to include in after-hours events, better positioned for networking. I stared at him. "So your career trajectory requires me not to exist?" He sighed like I was being difficult on purpose. "Mara, don't make it weird." "I'm not making it weird. I'm asking what you're saying." "I'm saying people relate differently when they think you're available. It opens doors." "What kind of doors, Adrian?" He rolled his eyes. "Professional doors, networking doors. Not everything is about what you're implying." I sat there for a second, listening to the heat click on, watching him act like he had explained something reasonable. Then I said, "Professional boundaries matter. But there's a difference between keeping your personal life private and actively pretending your girlfriend of 2.5 years doesn't exist." His face hardened. "You're being insecure." "No," I said. "You're not setting a boundary. You're erasing me." He leaned back, annoyed now. "It's not that deep." But it was. It was exactly that deep. I didn't fight him that night. Not because I agreed, because something inside me went very still. There are moments when your heart still wants an explanation, but your dignity already understands the answer. Over the next week, I noticed everything I had been trying not to see. Every photo of us on his Instagram was gone. Not deleted, archived. His page looked like a curated single-man mood board. Solo coffee shots, gym mirror pictures, rooftop drinks, captions about ambition, growth, and becoming someone your younger self would admire. I scrolled back 3 months. There wasn't one trace of me. Then I checked his LinkedIn. His About section had been rewritten. He described himself as exploring the city, building meaningful professional connections, and always open to conversations with ambitious creatives. Under his posts, women from his company kept commenting. Love this perspective. We should grab coffee and talk more about this. This is exactly the energy our industry needs. And Adrian replied to every single one with just enough warmth to make my chest feel cold. I still said nothing. I filed it away. Then luck or humiliation wearing a nicer coat handed me the rest. A friend from my Wednesday rec league basketball team mentioned his wife had just started at a marketing agency. Same agency, different department. I asked one casual question, then another. He confirmed the holiday party was absolutely a +1 event. His wife was taking him. I looked at him and said, "Would your wife be comfortable if I came as her +1 instead?" He blinked. Then I gave him the short version. His face changed halfway through. When I finished, he said, "Mara, that's messed up." I know. He nodded once. Then yes, you're coming with us. And that was the moment I stopped waiting to be invited into my own relationship. Saturday night arrived colder than I expected. The cold wasn't in the weather, it was somewhere inside me. That afternoon, I stood in my bedroom, staring at my closet like I was preparing for a role I had never auditioned for. I picked the navy blouse because it made me look sharper, bought a decent pair of tailored slacks on the way home, and even got my hair done. Not for Adrian. For me, because if I was going to walk into the room where he had erased me, I was not going to arrive looking apologetic. My friend picked me up around 7. His wife was already in the passenger seat, twisting around the moment I got in. She smiled in the way women do when they already know the full story and have decided exactly whose side they're on. "I've seen Adrian around the office," she said. "This is going to be fascinating." I laughed, but my stomach was tight enough to make breathing feel deliberate. The venue was exactly what I expected. String lights, glass walls, a rented downtown event space trying very hard to look effortlessly expensive. Bartenders in black poured cocktails no one actually liked, but everyone ordered because they sounded sophisticated. Tiny catered appetizers moved through the room on silver trays. Music played just loud enough to make people lean closer than necessary. It was the kind of room where everyone performed a slightly shinier version of themselves. We walked in together. Nobody stopped me. Nobody questioned why I was there. For the first 15 minutes, I did nothing dramatic. I took a drink, made polite small talk, and introduced myself to a few people from my friend's wife's department. "What do you do?" someone asked. "Diesel mechanic." And without fail, every person reacted normally. One woman smiled and said her father used to work on engines. A guy from finance asked whether electric fleets were changing the industry. No one laughed. No one looked embarrassed for me. No one acted like I was socially radioactive, which somehow hurt even more, because it meant Adrian's shame had never belonged to the world. It belonged entirely to him. Then I saw him, across the room, standing at one of those tall cocktail tables, with a cluster of coworkers, drink in hand, laughing at something a woman beside him had said. He looked relaxed, confident, comfortable, like a man living inside a story he had written for himself. And for one ridiculous second, I just stared, because this was the same man who used to fall asleep halfway through movies with his head in my lap. The same man who once called me crying after a brutal interview because he thought he had blown it. The same man who used to say I made him feel grounded. Yet there he was, perfectly at ease in a world where I had been edited out. He hadn't seen me yet. That almost made it worse. My friend's wife stayed close, but wisely didn't force anything. Things unfolded naturally, which somehow made the whole thing more devastating. We were talking to a woman from another department when she casually asked whether I knew anyone else at the company. Before I could answer, my friend's wife smiled and said, "Actually, yes, she's dating someone here." The woman looked interested. "Oh, who?" My friend's wife pointed across the room. "Him." The woman followed her finger. Her expression changed in slow motion. Confusion. Recognition. Then absolute disbelief. "Wait," she said. "Adrian?" I nodded. "Yes." Her mouth actually parted. "He has a girlfriend?" "Not had." "Has." Present tense. I took a sip of my drink before answering. "For 2.5 years." The woman looked like someone had quietly informed her that gravity had been canceled. "That can't be right." "It is. But he told everyone he was single." "Apparently," I said evenly, "that was part of his networking strategy." That line traveled faster than I expected. Not because anyone was trying to create drama, but because offices run on information. And this was irresistible information. People started connecting dots in real time. A woman who had clearly flirted with him looked suddenly horrified. A younger employee whispered something to her friend, and both glanced toward Adrian. A guy near the bar stared at me like he was mentally replaying months of conversations. Still nobody yelled. Nobody made a spectacle. That was what made it brutal. It wasn't chaos. It was quiet social recalibration. Then the first direct collision happened. A woman from Adrian's team approached me near the bar. She introduced herself awkwardly, then hesitated like she wasn't sure whether she was stepping into personal disaster. "So, you're actually his girlfriend?" "Yes." She shifted her weight. "Wow." I waited. She exhaled. "I thought he was interested in me." There it was. I blinked, not because I was shocked, but because hearing it aloud always lands differently. "What made you think that?" He never corrected anything. He let me believe he was single. He even said yes to coffee once, then canceled last minute. I nodded slowly. Understood. And genuinely, I meant it. By then, I wasn't angry at strangers operating on false information. I was angry at the man who created the false information. The ripple kept spreading. Then Adrian saw me. I'll never forget that expression. His entire body froze before his face caught up. The drink in his hand stopped halfway to his mouth. The color left him so fast it was almost theatrical. Then he started moving. Fast. Too fast. He crossed the room like someone trying to outrun public humiliation. "What are you doing here?" he hissed. I kept my tone calm. "I'm a +1. His jaw tightened. "You need to leave." "Why?" "Mara." His voice dropped lower. Sharp. Dangerously controlled. "This is not okay." I looked around. Really? Everyone's been very welcoming. "Mara." A few people seem surprised I exist, though. That landed exactly where I intended. His face hardened. Then he grabbed my wrist, not violently, but firmly enough to make the message clear, and led me toward the hallway. The second those doors closed behind us, the mask came off. Inside the party, he had still been trying to preserve whatever version of himself existed in that room. Out there, with no audience, all that polished corporate restraint disappeared. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he asked. Not hurt, not embarrassed. Furious. The kind of fury that comes from losing control, not losing someone. I leaned against the wall and looked at him. "Introduce myself?" "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Act innocent." That word stayed with me. Innocent. As if simply existing in public as his girlfriend was some kind of calculated offense. "As far as I can tell," I said, keeping my voice level, "I showed up at a party I was allowed to attend, spoke to people who asked questions, and answered honestly." "You blindsided me." "No," I said, "you blindsided yourself." His expression sharpened. "You humiliated me." That almost made me laugh, but it caught somewhere in my chest instead. Because humiliation is a fascinating word when it comes from the person who spent months manufacturing yours in private. "I humiliated you?" I asked, "by telling the truth?" "You knew exactly what would happen." "What exactly?" "That people would talk." I let that sit for a moment. "And what would they be talking about, Adrian?" He said nothing, because we both knew the answer. Not me. Him. The fact that he had spent months telling coworkers he was single. The fact that several women apparently believed him. The fact that whatever image he had built was now collapsing under the unbearable weight of reality. He raked a hand through his hair. "You could have handled this privately." That one actually offended me. "Privately?" I repeated. "I did handle it privately. I asked you about the holiday party privately. I asked you why nobody at your office knew you had a girlfriend privately. I told you exactly how humiliating this felt privately." By then his face had changed. Less rage, more defensiveness. Because people get uncomfortable when you calmly replay their own behavior back to them. "You're twisting this." "No," I said quietly. "I'm remembering it accurately." He crossed his arms. "You don't understand how corporate environments work." There it was again, the phrase he used like a locked door. "Then explain it to me." He sighed dramatically, like he was speaking to someone painfully beneath him. "Relationships change how people perceive you." "How?" "People assume things." "What things?" "That you're less available, less socially flexible." I stared at him. "So, your career advancement depended on women thinking they had access to you?" "That's not what I said." "It's exactly what you said." "No, you're reducing it." "No, Adrian, I'm simplifying it." That made him angrier, because simplification has a cruel way of exposing nonsense. "You don't get it," he snapped. "This world is different." "Different from what?" "From your world." And there it was, the quiet contempt finally stepping into the light. The sentence wasn't technically about my job, but it absolutely was. Your world. Grease. Engines. Work boots. Lunch breaks and service bays. People who say what they mean. Not this world. Not polished networking smiles and strategic omissions. Something inside me went strangely calm, because once disrespect becomes explicit, confusion dies. I looked at him and asked, "Are you ashamed of me?" For the first time, he hesitated. And hesitation is often louder than honesty. "That's not fair." That wasn't an answer. "Mara." Simple question. He looked away. That told me enough. Still, he tried. "This isn't about shame." "Then what is it?" "Image." I actually blinked, because he said it so plainly, like it was reasonable, like image and shame weren't cousins living in the same house. Wow. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. No, I meant optics. I laughed once, short and disbelieving. "Adrian, optics is just shame wearing nicer shoes." His jaw tightened. "You always do this." "Do what?" "Turn everything emotional." That nearly took my breath away. Because what exactly did he think this was? An accounting error? A scheduling issue? A clerical misunderstanding? "This is emotional," I said. "I'm your girlfriend." "You're being dramatic." There it was. That familiar little word people use when accountability becomes inconvenient. I nodded slowly. "Interesting." "What?" "You spent months pretending I didn't exist, but somehow I'm the dramatic one." He rubbed his forehead. "Can you please just leave?" And there it was. Not an apology. Not regret. Damage control. I studied him for a moment. The expensive blazer, the carefully styled hair, the man who once cried in my kitchen because his old employer passed him over, the same man who had said, "I just want to be respected." Funny. So did I. If the truth ruins your image, I said, the problem was never the truth. He stared at me. Then he said something that ended whatever was left between us. This is borderline psychotic. That sentence didn't hurt the way he probably hoped. It clarified things. Sane people do not call reality unstable simply because reality arrived publicly. I straightened. Good luck with your networking. Then I walked back inside. And because I refused to let that night become only humiliation, I stayed. I danced. I ate terrible catered sliders. I had an unexpectedly fascinating conversation with a project manager about logistics infrastructure and freight efficiency. One woman told me she liked my earrings. Another quietly said, "For what it's worth, I'm sorry." That meant more than she probably knew. When I finally left, my friend's wife dragged me into the photo booth and handed me a fake mustache prop. "Smile," she said. And somehow I actually did, because for the first time that night, I no longer felt invisible. Adrian didn't come home. The next morning, I woke up to one text. "We need to talk, but what you did was unforgivable." I read it twice, then typed back. "What I did was show up. What you did was make me disappear. I'll talk when you're ready, but I'm not apologizing." 3 dots appeared, then vanished. No reply. But Monday came, and apparently, so did consequences. Monday evening, Adrian came home. Not dramatically, not like someone arriving to repair a relationship. He walked in the way people come home after losing an argument with reality and deciding they need a new villain. I was in the kitchen when I heard his keys. There's something unsettling about ordinary sounds after betrayal. A front door opening, shoes against hardwood, the refrigerator humming while your relationship quietly changes shape in the next room. Life keeps sounding normal even when nothing is normal anymore. He set his bag down harder than necessary and stood there for a second like he was rehearsing. Then he said, "My boss pulled me aside today." I looked up from the counter. Okay. No panic, no sympathy, just that single word. Because by then, I had learned something painful about love. Once someone repeatedly teaches you that your feelings are negotiable, empathy starts arriving more cautiously. He pulled out a chair and sat at the kitchen table. That same kitchen where we had eaten takeout in sweatpants and laughed over bad reality TV. Funny how betrayal doesn't always destroy places. Sometimes it just changes the temperature inside them. "He said concerns were raised," Adrian began. "About?" He gave a bitter laugh. "Apparently my personal honesty." I leaned against the counter. "And what did he say exactly?" Adrian's expression shifted into mock professionalism, complete with air quotes. Something about trust being foundational in client-facing environments. "And what did you tell him?" "That it was personal." "Did that work?" He looked away. "Not quite. He said it wasn't about the relationship, it was about judgment." I nodded slowly. That tracked. Because the problem had never been having a girlfriend. The problem was constructing an identity around not having one. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he inhaled, and I saw it coming. The pivot. "I need you to do something." There it was. Not apology. Not accountability. Need. "What?" He met my eyes. "I need you to call my boss." I genuinely thought I had misheard him. "I'm sorry?" "Just tell him we were on a break when I started." I stared. He continued, gaining confidence the longer he talked. "Say we only recently got back together. That technically, I wasn't lying." I actually laughed. Not cruelly. Just the involuntary laugh your body makes when absurdity outruns your emotional processing. "You want me to lie to protect the lie." That's not what this is. "No?" It's reframing. That word almost made me tired. Reframing. As if dishonesty becomes respectable if you dress it in corporate vocabulary. I walked to the table and sat across from him. "Let me understand this clearly. You spent months pretending I didn't exist. Then you got caught. Then your boss questioned your judgment. And now your solution is for me to participate in the deception?" His jaw tightened. "I could lose this job." There are moments in relationships where the real fracture isn't the betrayal. It's the entitlement that follows it. The quiet belief that after hurting you, they still deserve your rescue. "No," I said calmly. "You could lose credibility. That matters." "Yes," I said, "it does." He leaned forward. "Please." That surprised me because it sounded almost sincere. For one irrational second, I saw the version of him I used to love. The scared version. The vulnerable version. The man who once admitted he feared being average. And that almost softened me. Almost. Then he spoke again. "You don't understand how much pressure there is." There it was. The escape hatch. Not remorse. Self-pity. I asked quietly. "Pressure to do what?" "To compete." "With who?" "Everyone." "That required pretending your girlfriend didn't exist?" He looked frustrated now, like I was refusing to understand a brilliantly nuanced point. "You can't relate." "Why not?" He stopped. Because he knew. But he said it anyway. "Because you work on trucks." Silence, not loud silence. The dangerous kind. The kind where disappointment becomes physical. Because some insults don't wound because they're clever. They wound because they confirm what you feared. I had wondered, privately, whether some part of him had started seeing me differently after this job. Whether he found me embarrassing, less polished, less useful to the version of himself he wanted to become. And now there it was. Not fully spoken, but fully present. You think less of me, I said. His expression changed instantly. That's not what I said. It is. No, it absolutely is. He dragged a hand down his face. You always twist things emotionally. I laughed softly, not because it was funny, but because being accused of emotional distortion by someone actively asking you to lie is almost art. Adrian, I said quietly, I fix trucks for a living. And in all these years, I have somehow managed not to pretend the people I love don't exist to stay employed. He said nothing. Because what exactly do you say to that? That night, he left again. But over the next few days, the story kept unfolding. Once people start comparing notes, the truth develops a life of its own. Apparently, I hadn't been the only person Adrian had misled. I first heard the whispers through my friend's wife, who only knew pieces at first. But enough pieces formed a picture. Office gossip moves faster than email, when the story explains what everyone already sensed but couldn't prove. She called me Wednesday evening, not in a gossipy way, more in the tone of someone who had found mold behind a wall and felt morally obligated to warn the homeowner. Mara, she said, it's getting worse. I sat down on the couch. How bad? There was a pause. Apparently you weren't the only woman being misled. That sentence landed strangely. Not because I was shocked, but because betrayal has a cruel habit of confirming suspicions you hoped were only insecurity. Explain. Well, she said carefully, remember the woman who approached you at the party? The one who thought Adrian was interested? Yes. I waited. She wasn't the only one. I closed my eyes. Of course she wasn't. Looking back, certain things started rearranging themselves in my memory. Moments that once felt harmless now carried a different weight. How Adrian suddenly became oddly protective of his phone. How he laughed off after-hours invitations, but never clearly explained them. How he had once mentioned a coworker buying him lunch like it was some silly office joke. At the time, I thought nothing of it. That's the danger of trust. It doesn't make you stupid. It makes you generous in your interpretations. My friend's wife kept talking. At least 2 other women thought he was available. One of them regularly bought him lunch. That one hit. Not because of the money. Because I remembered Adrian mentioning it. I remembered teasing him. What, you've got admirers now? And him laughing. Occupational hazard. The things that sound charming before context. And another woman gave him birthday cologne. That made my stomach drop slowly, like an elevator descending one quiet floor at a time. Because I remembered the cologne. I remembered standing in our bathroom while he adjusted his tie, leaning in and saying, "That smells nice. New?" And Adrian smiling casually. Yeah, a coworker friend gave it to me. Friend. That word suddenly felt contaminated. Because deception often hides in tiny edits. Not giant lies. Just subtle word choices that guide your assumptions. A friend. A harmless lunch. A networking event. Strategic. All those neat little labels people use when they don't want to say what something actually is. What happened? I asked. My friend's wife sighed. This is where it gets messy. Apparently, one of the women who had been spending money on Adrian had a boyfriend, and that boyfriend found out. Which meant what had originally looked like awkward office gossip suddenly became a relationship issue for other people too. Once innocent bystanders start getting emotionally dragged into your deception, workplace tolerance tends to disappear quickly. Did she confront him? No, her boyfriend came to the office. I sat upright. What? Lobby, middle of the afternoon. Was it a scene? Not screaming, she said, but definitely upset. Honestly, that almost felt worse. Public emotional restraint often carries more weight than chaos. Anyone can dismiss yelling as drama. Quiet humiliation tends to linger. Apparently management got involved. Then HR. Not because Adrian had technically violated some catastrophic policy, but because enough interpersonal mess had spilled into the workplace that leadership had to look at the broader situation. That's an uncomfortable truth about adulthood. Consequences rarely arrive because of one giant failure. More often, they come from the accumulated inconvenience your choices create for everyone around you. And Adrian had become inconvenient. He called me that night. 4 times. I ignored the first 3. Answered the 4th. What? I said. His breathing already sounded angry. This is your fault. Straight to the point. Impressive. How? If you hadn't pulled that stunt. I attended a party. You exposed me. No, I said. Your own story stopped holding together. He exhaled sharply. People are treating me differently. That sentence told me everything. Not I handled things badly. Not I made mistakes. Not I hurt people. Just people are treating me differently. As though consequences were somehow more offensive than behavior. How differently? Cold. Why? Because they're judging me. Based on? Silence. Then, you know what? Forget it. No, I said calmly. Let's stay here. Mara? No, say it. He didn't. Finally, he snapped. They think I manipulated people. I let that breathe, then asked quietly, Did you? His silence answered. I wish I could tell you that silence felt satisfying. It didn't. It felt sad. Because there's a specific grief in realizing the person you loved keeps arriving at moral crossroads and consistently choosing self-preservation. He tried a different angle. The women at work are being especially hostile. I almost laughed. Why do you think that is? This is exactly what I mean. You don't get office politics. No, I said, I understand honesty. He hung up on me. Then his mother called the next day. Of course she did. Some people raise children. Others raise narratives. She didn't ask how I was. Didn't ask what happened. Didn't ask whether Adrian had misrepresented the relationship. She went directly to accusation. How could you humiliate him like that? Interesting wording. Not how could this happen. Not what went wrong. Just immediate emotional assignment. I tried handling it privately. You embarrassed him in front of professional colleagues. He embarrassed himself. That's unfair. No. Then she said something I had suspected for months but never heard out loud. Well, maybe if you had a more impressive career, he wouldn't have felt pressure to separate certain parts of his life. Silence. I can still remember exactly how still I became. Because betrayal hurts. But confirmation is different. Confirmation kills hope. There it was. No more euphemisms. No more networking. No more optics. No more career strategy. Just naked class shame. I wasn't hidden because of professionalism. I was hidden because I didn't match the image. And weirdly, that hurt less than I expected. Once something ugly becomes visible, it loses some of its power. Thank you, I told her. She sounded confused. For what? For being the first truly honest person in this entire situation. And I hung up. That night, I walked through the apartment slowly, looking at shared things. His coffee mug, his jacket, his charger permanently stealing my outlet. The ordinary debris of intimacy. It's strange what relationships leave behind. Not just emotional residue, physical proof. Evidence that two people once built routines around each other. And I realized something. Love should never require self-erasure as an entry fee. I pulled empty boxes from the storage closet and started packing. Not angrily. That's the part people always imagine wrong. No dramatic throwing of clothes. No smashing framed photos. No revenge soundtrack playing in the background while I made symbolic decisions. Just quiet certainty. And honestly, quiet certainty is far more dangerous than rage. Rage still negotiates. Rage still hopes to be seen. Certainty simply closes the door. I folded Adrian's shirts the way I always had. Carefully. Neatly. Which felt absurd, if I'm being honest. There I was, packing up a man who had treated me like a branding inconvenience, and some muscle memory in me still wanted to be kind. That's another ugly truth about heartbreak. Love doesn't vanish the same day respect does. Sometimes your hands remember tenderness long after your mind has accepted reality. I packed his shoes, his chargers, his expensive skincare products that somehow took up more bathroom space than mine. Then the cologne. That stupid cologne. I held it for a second longer than necessary. Because memory is cruel like that. One scent and suddenly you're back in an entirely different version of your life. A random Tuesday morning. His arms around my waist while I made coffee. That same scent on his neck. Me kissing his jaw without knowing another woman had paid for the bottle. I set it in the box harder than necessary. Not because of the gift. Because of the lie attached to it. By midnight, everything was stacked by the door. The apartment looked emotionally rearranged, like someone had removed the soundtrack but left the furniture. I texted him. Your things are packed. Pick them up this week. Leave the key on the counter. He replied almost immediately. You're seriously ending this over one misunderstanding? I stared at that message for a long moment. One misunderstanding. It's fascinating how some people summarize repeated deception once consequences become inconvenient. I typed back, I'm ending this because you treated me like something to hide. The party only made it visible. He didn't answer. And for the first time in weeks, I slept. Not well. But honestly, there's a difference. 6 weeks passed. People love dramatic endings. Immediate firings, public breakdowns, instant karma delivered with cinematic timing. Real life usually isn't that clean. Adrian wasn't fired. I should say that clearly, because truth matters. His life didn't explode overnight. It eroded. According to my friend's wife, HR eventually closed the workplace review without formal disciplinary action. No scandal memo, no humiliating dismissal, no security escort carrying a cardboard box. But something more subtle happened. He was quietly moved off a high-profile client account. Officially, it was a strategic reassignment. Unofficially, the client team wanted someone they felt comfortable relying on. That phrase stayed with me, because professional credibility isn't built through charm, it's built through consistency, through the small alignment between what you say and who you are when nobody is managing the room. Adrian had mastered presentation, but presentation and character are not the same skill. He was also passed over for a project lead role he had been chasing hard. Someone less experienced got it instead. My friend's wife heard the explanation secondhand, the way offices pass around careful truths in careful language. Talent wasn't the issue. Judgment was. That sentence felt brutal but accurate. Because this was never really about his ambition. Ambition isn't ugly. Wanting more from your life isn't ugly. Pretending the person who loves you is disposable because she doesn't fit the room you want to impress? That's ugly. Apparently, some workplace relationships never recovered either. One coworker transferred teams because everything felt awkward. Another stopped speaking to him altogether. People who once thought he was charming suddenly reevaluated every interaction through a different lens. That's the real consequence of dishonesty. Not punishment. Reinterpretation. Once someone realizes you lied, they start mentally reopening old files. Wait, what about that conversation? Was that true? What else was performance? His social life took damage too. Even his best friend apparently got tired of hearing the same version of events. According to my friend's wife, someone finally asked Adrian a very simple question. What exactly did Mara do? And apparently he never had a clean answer. Because what did I do? Attend a public event? Answer questions honestly? Exist? Victim narratives only work when the facts stay blurry. Clarity ruins them. His mother texted me once more, a very long message about how I would regret losing someone as ambitious as her son, that no man with goals would tolerate insecurity, that I should enjoy my trucks. I read it once, screenshotted it, sent it to my basketball friend with, in case I ever miss being single less, then deleted the thread. And me? Healing mostly looked boring. I went back to work, changed oil, rebuilt engines, got grease under my nails, bought groceries, ignored certain songs, avoided certain restaurants, missed him at strange times. That's something nobody tells you. Missing someone is not proof you made the wrong choice. Sometimes you miss familiarity, routine. The version of a person that existed before reality corrected your understanding. I missed the Adrian who sang terribly in my passenger seat, the Adrian who held my hand under restaurant tables, the Adrian who said he admired how grounded I was. But eventually I understood something difficult. That version of him may have been real once, or maybe it was only real when loving me required nothing from his ego. Either way, the outcome was the same. One Wednesday after basketball, my friend's wife handed me garlic bread and said, "You deserve someone who brags about you." I laughed, because she was right, and because some truths heal better when served with carbs. I still only own 2 nice blouses. I still work on trucks. I still think people overpay for cocktails in rooms designed to impress strangers. And I still don't regret walking into that party. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I needed to stand in the room he erased me from and remember one thing clearly. I was never the embarrassing part of that relationship. Being unseen by the wrong person does not make you invisible. Last I heard, Adrian still works at the same company, same title, same office, and apparently actually single now. Which, ironically, means he finally got the image he worked so hard to create. As for his contact in my phone, gone. Not archived. Not renamed. Deleted. Because unlike Adrian, when I move on, I don't perform it. I actually do.